The era of narcissism. Why modern society is making you miserable. Imagine waking up every morning, checking your phone, and feeling like you're already behind. Someone is on a dream vacation. Someone else just bought a luxury car. And then there's the endless stream of people who seem happier, more successful, and more confident than you. You scroll, you compare, and before you even get out of bed, you feel like you're losing a race you didn't sign up for. But here's the twist. This isn't just you. This is by design. We live in an age where self-promotion isn't just encouraged, it's required. Success isn't just about achievement. It's about how well you can package yourself, market yourself, and sell a version of your life that looks impressive. But this obsession with image, status, and performance is leaving us drained, disconnected, and, ironically, more insecure than ever. Welcome to the era of narcissism, a time when we're constantly looking at ourselves, yet failing to see who we really are. In this video, we're going deep. We'll uncover how modern society has shaped us into performers rather than people. We'll explore the ideas of philosophers like Byung-Chul Han, the hidden mechanisms behind social media, and why the pursuit of happiness is making us miserable. More importantly, we'll question whether we're truly in control of our lives, or if we've become products of a system designed to keep us anxious and unsatisfied. But first, let's talk about how we got here. How did society turn us into performers, constantly curating our existence for an invisible audience? The answer lies in understanding the narcissistic age, how modern society turned us into performers. The narcissistic age, how modern society turned us into performers. The rise of the performance society. Once upon a time, life was about being. You were a person first. Your job, your social standing, and your achievements came second. Fast forward to today, and that has flipped entirely. Now, you are what you do, how you appear, and how well you can perform for an audience. Every aspect of modern life, work, relationships, and even hobbies, has become a stage where you must prove your worth to others. This shift didn't happen overnight. It's the result of a society that rewards visibility over substance and forces us to constantly showcase our lives rather than live them. We see this in the workplace, where success is no longer just about competence, but about self-branding and networking. We see it in dating, where swiping culture reduces deep human connection to quick judgments based on curated photos. And of course, we see it in social media, where people present idealized versions of themselves to gain likes, followers, and validation. We've all become performers, trapped in a system that values spectacle over sincerity. But how did we get here? From identity to image. The shift in self-perception. One of the most dangerous aspects of this performance society is that we've internalized it. The pressure to be constantly seen, to impress, and to succeed is no longer something external. It's something we impose on ourselves. We have become both the actors and the audience in our own lives. Think about it. How often do you do things just for yourself, without thinking about how they will be perceived by others? Whether it's taking a picture of your meal, choosing an outfit, or even forming an opinion, there's often an underlying thought. How will this look? This shift in self-perception has led to a phenomenon where people experience their own lives from an outsider's perspective, rather than simply living in the moment. Psychologists call this self-objectification. It means you don't just exist, you watch yourself exist. Instead of focusing on what makes you happy or fulfilled, you focus on what makes you look good to others. This is exhausting, but it's also deeply ingrained in our culture. We've been trained to see ourselves as brands, not as people. Social media, the ultimate stage. Social media didn't create this problem, but it supercharged it. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter have turned everyday life into a performance. Here's the truth. Social media doesn't just show us reality, it reshapes it. The algorithms reward controversy, extremism, and attention-seeking behavior, which means the most visible people online aren't necessarily the most authentic, they're the best performers. The need to constantly curate, filter, and optimize our lives for an invisible audience creates a disconnect between who we are and who we pretend to be. And the worst part, the rewards are temporary, but the anxiety is permanent. You get a dopamine rush when your post does well, but that feeling fades, and you're left needing another hit, more likes, more followers, more validation. The era of narcissism, why modern society is making you miserable. Imagine waking up every morning, checking your phone, and feeling like you're already behind. Someone is on a dream vacation, someone else just bought a luxury car. And then there's the endless stream of people who seem happier, more successful, and more confident than you. You scroll, you compare, and before you even get out of bed, you feel like you're losing a race you didn't sign up for. But here's the twist. This isn't just you. This is by design. We live in an age where self-promotion isn't just encouraged, it's required. Success isn't just about achievement. It's about how well you can package yourself, market yourself, and sell a version of your life that looks impressive. But this obsession with image, status, and performance is leaving us drained, disconnected, and, ironically, more insecure than ever. Welcome to the era of narcissism, a time when we're constantly looking at ourselves, yet failing to see who we really are. In this video, we're going deep. We'll uncover how modern society has shaped us into performers rather than people. We'll explore the ideas of philosophers like Byung-Chul Han, the hidden mechanisms behind social media, and why the pursuit of happiness is making us miserable. More importantly, we'll question whether we're truly in control of our lives, or if we've become products of a system designed to keep us anxious and unsatisfied. But first, let's talk about how we got here. How did society turn us into performers, constantly curating our existence for an invisible audience? The answer lies in understanding the narcissistic age, how modern society turned us into performers. The narcissistic age, how modern society turned us into performers. The rise of the performance society. Once upon a time, life was about being. You were a person first. Your job, your social standing, and your achievements came second. Fast forward to today, and that has flipped entirely. Now, you are what you do, how you appear, and how well you can perform for an audience. Every aspect of modern life, work, relationships, and even hobbies, has become a stage where you must prove your worth to others. This shift didn't happen overnight. It's the result of a society that rewards visibility over substance and forces us to constantly showcase our lives rather than live them. We see this in the workplace, where success is no longer just about competence, but about self-branding and networking. We see it in dating, where swiping culture reduces deep human connection to quick judgments based on curated photos. And of course, we see it in social media, where people present idealized versions of themselves to gain likes, followers, and validation. We've all become performers, trapped in a system that values spectacle over sincerity. But how did we get here? From identity to image. The shift in self-perception. One of the most dangerous aspects of this performance society is that we've internalized it. The pressure to be constantly seen, to impress, and to succeed is no longer something external. It's something we impose on ourselves. We have become both the actors and the audience in our own lives. Think about it. How often do you do things just for yourself, without thinking about how they will be perceived by others? Whether it's taking a picture of your meal, choosing an outfit, or even forming an opinion, there's often an underlying thought. How will this look? This shift in self-perception has led to a phenomenon where people experience their own lives from an outsider's perspective, rather than simply living in the moment. Psychologists call this self-objectification. It means you don't just exist, you watch yourself exist. Instead of focusing on what makes you happy or fulfilled, you focus on what makes you look good to others. This is exhausting, but it's also deeply ingrained in our culture. We've been trained to see ourselves as brands, not as people. Social media, the ultimate stage. Social media didn't create this problem, but it supercharged it. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter have turned everyday life into a performance. Here's the truth. Social media doesn't just show us reality, it reshapes it. The algorithms reward controversy, extremism, and attention-seeking behavior, which means the most visible people online aren't necessarily the most authentic, they're the best performers. The need to constantly curate, filter, and optimize our lives for an invisible audience creates a disconnect between who we are and who we pretend to be. And the worst part, the rewards are temporary, but the anxiety is permanent. You get a dopamine rush when your post does well, but that feeling fades, and you're left needing another hit, more likes, more followers, more validation. Narcissism as a system of control. Byung-Chul Han takes the idea of narcissism beyond just an obsession with self-image. He argues that modern narcissism is actually a system of control, one that makes people more isolated, more anxious, and more willing to exploit themselves. Unlike traditional narcissism, which was about vanity and arrogance, today's narcissism is fueled by insecurity. It's the need to be constantly validated, constantly seen, constantly improving. But this isn't just an individual issue, it's a structural one. The economy thrives on your self-doubt. The worse you feel about yourself, the more you consume. You feel unattractive? Buy these beauty products. You feel unproductive? Take this self-improvement course. You feel lonely? Engage more on social media. This creates a feedback loop where people keep searching for external validation but never find true satisfaction. Social media accelerates this process, turning identity into a product and making people compete for attention in an endless popularity contest. Han argues that this is not just an unfortunate side effect of modern culture, it's the defining feature of the digital age. We are encouraged to be constantly visible, to market ourselves as brands, and to measure our worth based on engagement metrics. But instead of making us happier, this culture is making us miserable, exhausted, and disconnected from reality. The psychological toll of the performance society. The consequences of this system are profound. According to Han, the modern individual is trapped in a paradox. We are told we are free, yet we feel more pressured than ever. We have more choices than past generations, yet we feel paralyzed by indecision. We are more connected through technology, yet we feel deeply alone. This is because the performance society breeds exhaustion and self-hatred. When people believe that success is purely a matter of effort, failure becomes a personal flaw, not a systemic issue. If you're not happy, not successful, not constantly improving, the problem must be you, not the impossible standards set by society. Han's work forces us to ask, what happens when a generation grows up believing they are never enough? The answer is clear: burnout, anxiety disorders, and a profound sense of emptiness. In a world where people are constantly performing, there's no room left to just exist. But what if the real issue isn't just narcissism itself? What if the problem is even deeper? Our very perception of freedom. Are we truly in control of our own lives, or are we just playing a role in a system designed to keep us chasing illusions? Let's explore this in the next section. The illusion of freedom. Are you truly in control? The myth of individualism. We live in a world that constantly tells us you are in control of your own destiny. Work hard, make the right choices, and success will follow. This idea is so deeply ingrained in modern culture that questioning it feels almost heretical. But what if it's just an illusion? What if the very idea of freedom that we hold onto is actually a sophisticated form of control? In today's society, freedom doesn't mean autonomy, it means competition. We are told we have limitless choices, but every choice comes with pressure. Want to be successful? You need to hustle harder. Want to be attractive? Optimize your appearance. Want to be happy? Practice mindfulness and gratitude. The hidden message is clear. If you're not thriving, it's your fault. This myth of radical individualism convinces us that our failures are personal, rather than the result of systemic structures. If you can't find a job, it's not because of economic conditions, it's because you didn't market yourself properly. If you're struggling with mental health, it's not because society is stressful, it's because you're not meditating enough. The burden is always placed on the individual, never on the system. By making everything a matter of personal responsibility, modern society ensures that people blame themselves instead of questioning the structures that keep them trapped. But the truth is, most of our freedom is carefully designed to keep us in a cycle of work, consumption, and self-optimization. The economy of endless choice. One of the biggest tricks of modern capitalism is the illusion of limitless choice. We have more options than ever before: what to buy, where to work, who to date, what to believe. On the surface, this seems empowering, but psychologists have found that too much choice actually leads to anxiety and paralysis. Take social media, for example. You can create any version of yourself online, but that doesn't lead to freedom. It leads to constant self-doubt. Are you presenting the best version of yourself? Are you getting enough engagement? Did you make the right decision? With infinite possibilities, every choice feels like a test, and every mistake feels like failure. The same applies to careers. In the past, people followed a relatively fixed life path: school, job, retirement. Today, the pressure is on to reinvent yourself constantly. You're expected to be adaptable, to always be learning new skills, to turn every hobby into a side hustle. On the surface, this sounds like opportunity. In reality, it's a system that forces endless self-exploitation. Freedom, in this sense, isn't about genuine autonomy. It's about being constantly engaged in a never-ending process of self-optimization. You're free to do whatever you want, but if you stop performing, you fall behind. Is that really freedom? The psychological trap of self-exploitation. Byung-Chul Han argues that the greatest trick of modern power is that it makes us exploit ourselves voluntarily. Instead of an external boss forcing you to work harder, you become your own boss, the one setting impossible expectations, pushing yourself beyond exhaustion, and punishing yourself when you don't measure up. This is why burnout is so common today, not because people are lazy or weak, but because they are trapped in a system that demands constant productivity. The line between work and personal life has disappeared. Emails invade our evenings, side hustles consume our weekends, and even relaxation is turned into something that must be optimized. Even rest has become another task on the to-do list. Social media makes this even worse by reinforcing the idea that you must always be improving. You see others succeeding and you feel the pressure to keep up, but no one posts their failures, their exhaustion, or their anxiety. Everyone is performing, but no one is truly living. So if we're constantly working, constantly optimizing, constantly comparing, who is really in control? Us? Or the system that has conditioned us to believe that self-exploitation is the path to success? The illusion of escape. Many people believe that the solution is simple. Just step away from the system, delete social media, quit the rat race, live a simple life. But here's the hard truth. Even the idea of escape has been commodified. The wellness industry sells mindfulness as a product. Self-help books promise a 10-step guide to freedom, which of course you have to buy. Even movements like minimalism have been turned into aesthetic trends, where simplicity is something you can purchase. The system absorbs every attempt to reject it. The reality is that escaping the illusion of freedom requires more than just unplugging. It requires a fundamental shift in how we define success, happiness, and meaning. True freedom isn't about having unlimited choices. It's about having the power to say no, to reject the idea that your worth is tied to productivity, to stop viewing life as a performance, to stop measuring yourself against impossible standards. But this isn't easy. The system thrives on our insecurities, our desires, our fears, and nowhere is this more evident than in the digital world. Social media isn't just a tool, it's a mirror that traps us in an endless cycle of comparison and validation. And if you think you're in control of your digital life, think again. In the next section, we'll break down how social media has turned into the ultimate psychological prison and why escaping its grip is harder than you think. Social media, the digital mirror that traps you. The algorithm knows you better than you know yourself. Imagine this. You open your phone just to check something quickly, and suddenly an hour has passed. You don't even remember how you got there. You were pulled into a digital rabbit hole, scrolling endlessly, watching, liking, and engaging. But was any of it truly intentional? Social media platforms are not neutral tools. They are sophisticated psychological traps designed to keep you engaged for as long as possible. Every scroll, every like, every share feeds an algorithm that studies you, learns you, and predicts you. The more time you spend on the platform, the more data it collects, and the better it gets at manipulating you. But here's the scariest part. It doesn't just predict your behavior, it shapes it. The algorithm decides what you see, what you don't see, what you feel, and even what you believe. Think you're in control of your feed? Think again. The content you engage with is carefully curated to trigger your emotions: rage, desire, envy, outrage. These are the emotions that keep you scrolling. And the deeper you go, the harder it is to escape, because every interaction you have reinforces a digital version of yourself, one that might not even reflect who you truly are. Your online identity becomes a distorted mirror, shaped by the content you consume and the validation you seek. So if you're wondering why social media makes you feel drained, anxious, or inadequate, it's not an accident. It's by design. The attention economy and your stolen time. We often think of social media as free, but nothing is truly free, especially when it comes to billion-dollar tech platforms. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. The real currency of social media isn't money. It's attention, your time, your focus, your engagement. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, X, don't exist to connect people. They exist to extract as much attention from you as possible. Think about the way these platforms are designed. Infinite scrolling. There's no natural stopping point. You keep going mindlessly. Autoplay videos. You never have to make a choice. The next video starts before you can even think. Notifications, designed to trigger a dopamine rush, keeping you addicted to checking your phone. Likes and shares, turning social validation into a compulsive habit. The longer you stay, the more ads you see. The more ads you see, the more money the platform makes. Your distraction is their profit, and yet people willingly participate in this system. Why? Because social media isn't just about consuming, it's about being seen. The narcissistic trap of digital validation. Why do people post? On the surface, it seems simple to share moments, thoughts, ideas. But underneath that, there's a deeper psychological need, the need to be validated. In the digital world, attention is currency. The more engagement you get, the more valuable you feel. But there's a dark side to this. The pursuit of validation never ends. No matter how many likes, views, or followers you get, It's never enough. You're always chasing the next high. And social media exploits this perfectly. It turns self-expression into a performance where people aren't just sharing, they're curating, strategizing, optimizing. Your life becomes content. Your identity becomes a brand. Your self-worth becomes a metric. But what happens when the numbers don't add up, when the engagement drops, when the validation fades? People feel invisible, irrelevant, even worthless. The scariest part, even if you recognize this trap, it's hard to escape. Because social media isn't just about validation, it's also about fear. The fear of being forgotten. Imagine quitting social media completely. No posts, no updates, no presence. How does that feel? For many people, the idea is terrifying, not because they love social media, but because they fear irrelevance. This is one of the deepest psychological traps of the digital age. If you're not online, do you even exist? If no one is watching, do your experiences still matter? If you're not posting, are you falling behind? Social media creates a sense of urgency that never existed before. A pressure to stay visible, to stay relevant, to stay part of the conversation. If you step away, you risk being forgotten. This is why so many people feel stuck. They know social media is making them miserable, yet they can't leave, because leaving feels like disappearing. But here's the truth. Real life happens outside the screen. Your worth isn't defined by engagement metrics. Your value isn't measured in likes. But as long as you stay trapped in the digital mirror, breaking free feels impossible. So how do we escape? Can we use social media without letting it use us? Or are we doomed to exist in this cycle of validation and self-doubt forever? In the next section, we'll dive into the cult of self-optimization and why modern society convinces you that you're never enough. The cult of self-optimization. Why you're never enough. The rise of the optimized self. Once upon a time, success was about external achievements, wealth, status, stability. Today, it's about constant self-improvement. The modern world doesn't just expect you to be good at what you do, it expects you to be the best possible version of yourself at all times. You can't just work, you have to grind. You can't just exercise, you have to biohack your body. You can't just be happy, you have to maximize your mental health. The loneliness epidemic, why we are more connected, yet more isolated. The paradox of hyperconnectivity. We live in the most connected era in human history. With just a few taps, you can message a friend across the world, join online communities, or even watch someone's life unfold in real time, and yet people are lonelier than ever. Surveys show that loneliness has reached epidemic levels, especially among younger generations. In the US, nearly 1 in 3 adults reports feeling lonely frequently. In the UK, loneliness has become such a crisis that the government created a Minister of Loneliness. But how is this possible? If we're constantly interacting online, why do so many people feel disconnected and isolated? The problem isn't that we lack communication. The problem is that modern interactions have become shallow, transactional, and performative. We text instead of talk. We comment instead of connect. We scroll instead of socialize. Social media gives us the illusion of connection, but it doesn't provide depth. You can watch someone's life unfold on Instagram, but that doesn't mean you truly know them or that they know you. We have more friends than ever, but fewer real relationships. The death of deep relationships. In the past, friendships were built around shared experiences, real conversations, and physical presence. You met people through school, work, hobbies, or your local community. But today, relationships are increasingly mediated by screens. Instead of spending quality time with a few close friends, people distribute their attention across hundreds of weak digital connections. The result? Friendships become less personal. You see someone's updates, but rarely have deep conversations. Romantic relationships feel disposable. Dating apps turn people into endless options, making commitment feel like a risk. Family bonds weaken. People spend more time on their phones than engaging with those around them. Even worse, modern life makes it harder to form deep relationships. People move frequently for jobs, breaking community ties. Remote work isolates individuals from colleagues. The rise of individualism prioritizes self-fulfillment over long-term relationships. The consequence? Loneliness is no longer just an emotion. It's becoming a way of life. The role of social media in loneliness. Social media promises to connect us, but in many ways it does the opposite. It creates a performance-driven culture where people don't share their authentic selves, but rather a curated, idealized version. Think about it. Would you post a picture of yourself feeling lonely on a Friday night? Would you share a moment of deep sadness on Instagram? Probably not. Instead, people post highlight reels, the vacations, the achievements, the good times. It creates a false reality where it seems like everyone else is living a happy, connected life, while you're the only one feeling alone. This leads to the comparison trap. You see friends hanging out without you. You see couples posting perfect moments. You see influencers living glamorous lives. And even if you know it's not real, it still affects you. Studies show that the more time people spend on social media, the lonelier they feel. Because instead of making us feel connected, social media often makes us feel excluded. Can we escape the loneliness epidemic? So, is there a way out? Can we build real relationships in a world that encourages isolation and self-promotion? The answer isn't deleting social media, but it does require a shift in mindset and behavior. Prioritize depth over quantity. Instead of trying to maintain hundreds of online friendships, focus on building a few deep, meaningful connections. Create intentional time for real interactions. Call someone instead of texting. Meet in person instead of just liking their posts. Limit passive social media use. If scrolling makes you feel worse, be mindful of how much time you spend online. Engage in shared experiences. Join a group, attend events, or start a hobby that allows you to connect with people in real life. Be vulnerable. Real relationships require authenticity. The more open you are, the more likely you are to attract genuine connections. Loneliness isn't just about being alone, it's about feeling disconnected. And in a world that values performance over authenticity, true connection requires effort. In the next section, we'll explore how even our emotions are being manipulated by modern society through the rise of toxic positivity. Toxic positivity, how society forces you to be happy. Toxic positivity is one of the most insidious aspects of modern culture. It disguises itself as encouragement, as wisdom, as a way to help people navigate life's challenges. But beneath the surface, it carries a dangerous message. Negative emotions are unacceptable. We hear it all the time, just stay positive. Everything happens for a reason, good vibes only. These phrases seem harmless, even uplifting, but they reveal a deep societal discomfort with genuine human emotion. Instead of allowing people to express pain, sadness, or frustration, toxic positivity demands that they suppress these feelings, put on a happy face, and keep performing. The pressure to be happy at all times is overwhelming. It turns natural human suffering into a personal failure. If you're sad, you're not being grateful enough. If you're struggling, it's because you have the wrong mindset. The message is clear. If you're unhappy, it's your fault. But what happens when people are forced to fake happiness? They don't heal, they don't grow, they just become better at hiding their pain. In the workplace, toxic positivity is used as a tool of control. Employees are expected to be team players and maintain a can-do attitude, no matter how overworked or underpaid they are. Complaints are dismissed as negativity, and burnout is reframed as a lack of passion. Rather than addressing real problems, poor working conditions, low wages, toxic management, companies push the idea that happiness is an individual responsibility. Employees are encouraged to practice mindfulness, attend motivational seminars, or read self-help books to improve their mindset. The problem is never the system. It's always you. This ideology extends beyond work. Everywhere you look, people are told to manifest success, to think their way into a better life. But this completely ignores the reality of economic struggles, social inequality, and mental health issues. It shifts the blame from the structures that create suffering to the individual who experiences it. And that's exactly what makes it so effective. Social media has turned toxic positivity into a global phenomenon. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok are flooded with influencers preaching about the power of positive thinking. Their feeds are carefully curated to show nothing but success, wealth, and happiness. There's no room for failure, doubt, or struggle. This creates an impossible standard. People compare their real lives, full of ups and downs, to an edited version of reality. And when they inevitably fall short, they feel like they're failing at life. But instead of questioning the illusion, they blame themselves for not being positive enough. And then, of course, they look for solutions. They buy self-improvement courses, sign up for wellness retreats, and consume endless content on how to be happier. Toxic positivity doesn't just make people feel inadequate. It turns their inadequacy into a marketable problem. The result? A world where everyone is smiling on the outside but breaking on the inside. True emotional well-being isn't about being positive all the time. It's about being authentic. Happiness isn't something you can force, and suffering isn't something you can simply ignore. Real growth comes from embracing emotions, not suppressing them. But modern society doesn't want people to process their emotions. It wants them to keep performing. And nowhere is this more evident than in the way we've been conditioned to exploit ourselves, turning our very existence into a product. In the next section, we'll explore how society has made us our own prison guards, trapping ourselves in a system that demands constant self-exploitation. The exploitation of the self. Are you your own prison guard? Modern society has perfected a system where people no longer need external forces to control them. They control themselves. We live in an era where individuals are not just workers, but also their own bosses, brands, and products. The boundaries between personal life, career, and self-worth have been completely blurred, creating a world where people are constantly optimizing, hustling, and proving their value. At the heart of this system is a subtle but powerful shift. Exploitation no longer comes from an external oppressor, but from within. People willingly push themselves to exhaustion, convinced that they are doing it for their own success. But are they really in control? Or have they internalized a system designed to keep them forever working, forever striving, forever unsatisfied? Look at how we talk about work today. Be your own boss. Turn your passion into profit. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. These phrases sound empowering, but in reality, they blur the lines between labor and personal identity. Work is no longer just something you do, it's who you are. This is especially true with the rise of the gig economy and digital entrepreneurship. Social media has created an environment where everyone is expected to be constantly producing content, building their brand, and marketing themselves. Whether you're a freelancer, an influencer, or a small business owner, the expectation is the same. Hustle harder, work longer, and never stop growing. But the problem with this mindset is that it removes the possibility of rest. When your self-worth is tied to productivity, stopping feels like failure. And when your entire life becomes a business, there is no escape. You are both the worker and the boss, the product and the consumer, the prisoner and the guard. The idea of self-optimization has turned personal development into another form of labor. We are constantly told that we should be improving our skills, our health, our mindset, our bodies. There is always something to fix, something to optimize, something to make more efficient. At first glance, this seems like a good thing. After all, self-improvement is positive, right? But when taken to the extreme, it becomes a never-ending cycle of dissatisfaction. No matter how much you achieve, there is always another level to reach. This mentality has been deeply ingrained in modern life. Think about how many people track their steps, calories, productivity levels, sleep cycles. Technology has made it easier than ever to measure every aspect of our existence. But at what cost? When life itself becomes a project to be optimized, when do you actually get to live? Even rest has been commodified. Think about the wellness industry. It sells relaxation, meditation, and mindfulness as tools for increasing productivity. The message is clear. You should take care of yourself, but only so you can work harder afterward. This is how modern society keeps people in line without force. In the past, control came from external oppression, authorities, corporations, governments. But today, people have been trained to police themselves. They willingly work longer hours, push themselves to exhaustion, and feel guilty when they aren't being productive. In the end, this system thrives on one thing: dissatisfaction. If people were content, they wouldn't feel the need to hustle endlessly, to optimize every aspect of their lives, to constantly seek more. But is there a way to escape this cycle? Can people break free from the constant demand to perform, produce, and optimize? In the next section, we'll explore the possibility of breaking the narcissistic trap and reclaiming a life of true fulfillment. Escaping the narcissistic trap. Is there a way out? Escaping the narcissistic trap is not easy, because this system isn't just something external. It's inside us. It's in the way we think, the way we compare ourselves to others, the way we measure our own value. The modern world has conditioned us to seek validation, to perform for approval, and to feel restless unless we are constantly proving our worth. Breaking free doesn't mean rejecting success, ambition, or self-improvement. It means redefining what success actually is. It means asking yourself, who am I, without the need for external validation? Can you exist without being seen? Can you live without constantly proving your worth to others? The answer to these questions is the key to reclaiming your own life. The first step to escaping the narcissistic trap is disconnecting from the cycle of comparison. Social media is one of the most powerful forces keeping people trapped in the performance-based mindset. It creates an endless loop of comparison, dissatisfaction, and self-doubt. Every scroll reminds you of someone doing better, looking better, achieving more. But what would happen if you stopped looking? Try this experiment. Take a break from social media, not just for a day, but for a real extended period. Observe how your mind reacts. Do you feel anxious? Do you feel like you're missing something? If so, that's proof of how deeply this system has conditioned you. Stepping away from social media, even temporarily, can help reset your brain. It allows you to reconnect with real life, real experiences, real relationships. It reminds you that your value is not measured by likes, followers, or engagement. The second step is redefining your relationship with work and self-worth. If you've been conditioned to believe that your value comes from productivity, performance, and achievement, you need to actively unlearn this mindset. Stop glorifying busyness. Being constantly grinding isn't a badge of honor. It's a sign that you are trapped in a system that never lets you rest. Learn to separate who you are from what you do. You are not your job, your brand, or your achievements. Your worth exists outside of your productivity. Prioritize activities that have no external reward. Not everything needs to be monetized, optimized, or turned into content. Do things simply because they bring you joy, not because they add to your value in the eyes of others. When you detach your identity from achievement, you reclaim control over your own life. Finally, the most important step is rebuilding real human connections. The narcissistic era thrives on isolation, on keeping people so focused on themselves that they forget to truly connect with others. Breaking free means prioritizing genuine relationships over performance-based interactions. Choose depth over quantity. A handful of close, meaningful relationships will always be more fulfilling than hundreds of superficial connections. Be present. Instead of performing, try simply being. Not every moment needs to be shared, posted, or turned into content. Some of the best experiences in life happen when no one is watching. Embrace vulnerability. Let go of the need to appear perfect. The more you allow yourself to be real, with all your flaws, struggles, and imperfections, the more you will attract people who truly see and appreciate you. The real escape from the narcissistic trap isn't about opting out of society. It's about opting into reality. It's about breaking free from the illusion that your worth is tied to performance, that your identity is something to be marketed, that your happiness depends on external validation. The modern world wants you to be obsessed with yourself, because the more self-absorbed you are, the easier you are to control. The real rebellion is to step outside of that system and reclaim your right to simply exist. But will society ever change? Can we move past this era of narcissism, or is this just the beginning of something even worse? In the next section, we'll explore what the future holds and whether there is hope for something better. The future of society. Can we overcome this era of narcissism? The question remains, is this just a phase, or are we trapped in an irreversible cycle? Has narcissism become a permanent feature of modern life, or is there a possibility of something different, something better? History shows us that no era lasts forever. Cultural shifts happen, societies evolve. The values that seem absolute today may become outdated tomorrow, but change doesn't happen automatically. It requires awareness, resistance, and a conscious effort to move in a different direction. The future will depend on whether people wake up, whether they realize that the systems designed to keep them chasing validation, optimizing their lives, and performing for approval are not inevitable. They are choices, and choices can be changed. One potential future is acceleration. If things continue on their current path, society may become even more narcissistic, even more disconnected from reality. Technology will make self-obsession easier. AI-generated influencers, hyper-personalized social media feeds, and immersive virtual realities could make people even more detached from real life. The pressure to be a brand, to perform, and to optimize will increase. With more automation in the workplace, humans may be expected to focus even more on selling themselves rather than just working. Relationships could become even more transactional. Dating, friendships, and even family dynamics might be shaped by algorithms, data-driven compatibility, and performance-based social credit systems. If we do nothing, we may enter an era where authenticity is fully replaced by artificial perfection, where real human experiences are considered outdated. But that isn't the only possibility. Another future, one that is slowly emerging, is a rejection of this system. Some people are already pushing back. They are quitting social media, embracing digital minimalism, seeking out real-world experiences, and prioritizing human connection over online validation. The slow living movement, digital detoxes, and anti-productivity culture are all signs that people are recognizing the dangers of hyper-performance. Younger generations are becoming more skeptical of hustle culture, toxic positivity, and the idea that life is just about achieving more. Mental health awareness is shifting the conversation. Instead of glorifying constant self-optimization, more people are embracing imperfection, vulnerability, and balance. This resistance may start as a small movement, but it has the potential to grow into something bigger, a cultural shift away from narcissistic self-absorption and towards something more meaningful. So, can we overcome this era of narcissism? The truth is, society won't change overnight. The systems that fuel narcissism, social media, consumerism, performance culture, are deeply ingrained. But awareness is the first step. Once you see the trap, you can start to escape it. The future will be shaped by the choices people make today. Will they continue chasing endless validation, or will they step back and reclaim their right to live outside of performance? The choice is ours. Breaking free from the era of narcissism. We have spent this journey dissecting the world we live in, one that demands performance, thrives on self-obsession, and keeps us trapped in an endless cycle of validation seeking. But now, the real question remains, what will you do with this knowledge? Escaping the era of narcissism isn't about rejecting ambition, technology, or even social media. It's about something deeper, reclaiming your sense of self. It's about choosing authenticity over performance, presence over illusion, and fulfillment over endless striving. You don't need to be constantly visible to matter. You don't need to optimize every aspect of your life to be worthy. You don't need to seek approval to exist. The system we live in thrives on one thing: your participation. Every time you perform instead of being real, every time you chase external validation instead of inner fulfillment, every time you measure your worth through numbers, you reinforce the cycle. But the moment you step back, question, and choose a different path, you begin to break free. And the most powerful act of rebellion? Living a life that is truly yours. The choice is in your hands. Will you continue playing the game, or will you walk away and start living?